Welcome to Opal Rose Oracle. It's nice to be here with all of you on this Jupiter's day. Jupiter's entering Pisces. And I'm not really here to talk about astrology or the wild and wise meditations that we've been doing on Mondays. I'm not really here to talk about those. I wanted to take this opportunity, honestly, to just go into some of my reflections from the past year. 2020 was a really big year for change globally. On a macro level, yes, we know this, but the micro level changes have been just as powerful and real. So many of us have lost jobs, have lost loved ones, have had our lives completely shaken up in one way or another. And we could say it as, the global pandemic, COVID. That really just kind of set the stage, though, for a lot of interpersonal transformation and discovery. And some discoveries were really, really heartbreaking. And I think it's important to acknowledge that because a lot of us are still healing and recovering from 2020 and just all the transformations that we've gone through individually and collectively. How we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we see society, a lot of it has changed for a lot of us. And a lot of the things that maybe we've believed have finally come to the surface and have been illuminated, and some of those illuminations have been difficult. I know for me, as many of you know, I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher and have been for the last 6 years. And recently I haven't been teaching. I have my own spiritual practice, but even my own daily practice has looked more like connecting with my angels and my guides and meditating and listening and watching and learning, because there's so much going on in the world that's really important right now. And one of the important things is this really human experience that we're all having. It's so important for me personally that we as a collective of spiritual people understand that yes, we are innately spiritual. That's not in question. We're having a human experience, and this human experience is bringing up collective patterns and programming that have honestly caused a lot of pain and have had massive cries for change, and these massive cries for change are either getting, at this point in society, they're finally getting acknowledged, but there's still energies that would repress the cries for to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be taken with the reverence and sacredness that it serves. And what am I talking about specifically? Well, my thoughts and reflections have kind of stemmed all from what happened in the yoga community with Yogi Bhajan and everything that he did that hurt Trumka, Pamela Dyson, and many others within the 3HL community. And those sexual assault allegations I take very seriously. I talked about it a year ago, back in March, I think on the Feast of Mary Magdalene, where I addressed the fact that I've been through cults before within my Catholic roots, because many of you don't know, I was raised in an extremely devout Catholic family. And I didn't make the personal choice to leave it, to follow my own truth that existed outside of Catholicism until I was about 15 years old. But within that time, I experienced a Catholic cult called Regnum Christi. And I saw how it destroyed my family, how it destroyed friendships when I decided to leave, when my family finally decided to leave. And when you leave a cult, you get ostracized a lot of the time. There's massive retaliation by those who choose to stay, or those who choose not to believe the allegations. And we see that in the Kundalini Yoga community to this day. There are teachers out there that refuse to acknowledge that, there was wrongdoing in the community and that it was hushed up. And that really hit me personally. I remember going through my teacher training, and it was the allegations were brought up in my teacher training, but teacher trainings were like, those are just haters. Don't listen to the haters. And being really naive in trusting my teachers, really, really trusting my teachers, I was like, okay, on one hand, I'm going to listen to you and just continue on this process and learn the technology and learn the teachings. And on the other hand, there's a part of me that's going to keep this in my back pocket, because there was something there. There was something, that little tiny unsettledness within me that was like, you need to remember this moment for later. And of course, back in 2015, I didn't know why I was going to be triggered to remember my teachers just kind of deflecting the situation. But when all the allegations came out last March, it all started to make sense to me on a personal level, where I was like, oh, okay, I've been running with this crew for 5.5 years at that point, and been very active in the community. Every summer and every winter I would volunteer and do service exchange to participate in the winter and summer solstices, and I loved it. I loved the community, I loved the classes, I loved how I felt in that uplifted, what I considered a high vibe atmosphere. I felt like me. And that was a very important experience for me to have. All of it, every single part. But there were also moments within my experiences where my red flags did go off. I had a particularly powerful class where I remember distinctly, it was a winter solstice, And the teacher said, just because I love you does not mean I will not hurt you. And that hit me so hard. It troubled me so hard. And I had a very traumatic experience in that class. Some would call it a Kundalini awakening, but my body was in tremors. My nervous system was literally on fire. And it took me a year to confront that teacher and be like, this class, you said these words to all of us that just because you love us does not mean you will not hurt us. And that teacher just looked at me and she's like, oh, those are not my words. That's Yogi Bhajan. And that was all I needed to hear in that moment, to be like, oh, okay. Something's weird. Because love isn't pain. Love doesn't cause pain. There are other things that can surround love that can inflict pain. But love itself, love is healing. Sometimes that healing can hurt, but that's different. It's not malicious. And so I stopped teaching. Not because of that class, but it gave me pause. And when the allegations finally came out, I really took a step back. For a while, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just teach online. Maybe I'll just take the wisdom that I learned and go back to some of my roots. And that's where we got a lot of the dance meditations last year. I was like, I've learned so much about energy and intention, and my background and roots are in dance. We can make something new. Not new, we're not reinventing the wheel, but we can move forward in a very mindful and creative way that will indeed be successful. And it was. It was. I hope you all liked them. You know, those dance meditations were as much a journey in me, like coming back to myself and me trying to really come to terms with myself as a spiritual teacher and taking that very seriously, but also taking when I learned something and being able to change. Now, I think it's ironically Kundalini Yoga has actually been like coming up for me recently, a lot of the chants and mantras, and I'm gonna have to sit with it a little more and be like, so Spirit, do you want me to chant these things? Is it right? Is it? Because within the collective, cultural appropriation is a massive, massive, massive topic. That's important. Why is it important? Because respect is important. Learning about a culture, learning about roots, and truly honoring and respecting a culture that is outside of you is and should be fundamental. But I know, and we all know, when we look at society, that respect seems like it can be very lacking. And it saddens me. But it also stirs a fire within me that makes me want to do better and be better. Yes, as a yoga teacher, if I ever choose to teach yoga again, it's going to be after some real, maybe some further deep listening. Because there's so much going on in India right now as we speak that I don't even know enough about. And it sickens me. The fact that no one's talking about what's going on in India and the crises that they're facing due to COVID. Their oxygen crisis right now. And the fact that I heard one person on Instagram talk about the oxygen crisis going on in India right now, and that I have to learn it secondhand because I'm not hearing about it from my communities, and I'm sure as heck not hearing about it on my news, makes me go, man, well, there's a lot of work that we need to do because India needs our support. And who are we teaching yoga if we're not supporting where yoga comes from? If we're not reaching out to India right now, or at least talking with our communities and spreading the word so that people can lend assistance in any way, whether it's, donations and volunteering or just educating ourselves so that we know what's going on to, yes, our brothers and sisters across the globe, especially if we are teaching. Because to not know what's going on in India and to be teaching yoga right now just seems wrong. And so I'm not going to feel bad for not actively teaching right now because India needs my help. India needs all of our helps. But beyond that, there's so much going on right here in America where I live that there is so much more help to be given right here in addressing the issues that are going on in America. Talking about cultural appropriation and this colonistic mentality of just being able to claim something. America has that problem. America's always had that problem. The fact that we even call it America and not its indigenous name, Turtle Island, is problem number one. And what's going on in the indigenous communities right now with our stolen women and sisters, and no one is talking about it, infuriates me. I have been listening for a year and a half to my spiritual communities, and no one is talking about it. It's like there's this idea that that it is not love and light and not high vibe to care about what's going on when India, indigenous across America and in Canada and everywhere, the Asian communities, Black communities, they need our help. And as someone who loves and feels so deeply, how can one not be outraged at the atrocities by the hands of these neo-colonists? Colonization isn't dead. It's a crazy mix between appropriation and cancel culture. And it blows my mind. And these are topics that need to be unpacked. Especially by us whites. And yes, I claim myself as white, even though I don't know. Identity is a really interesting thing because I know what I've been taught. Like, I know where my fam I know where my father's family comes from. I know my grandfather is an immigrant from Portugal. I know my grandmother is first generation American, but her family was immigrated from Sicily. My great grandmother Rosalia. And I know my mother's family has some indigenous blood in it. But I've never been able to claim it my entire life just because I never knew her. I never really spoke of her. And I just feel ultimately when I think of like my great 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 grandmother on my mother's side who is indigenous, I'm sorry she was ever taken from her family and forced to assimilate into white colonial life. I know very few stories, I know very few songs, I don't know the language, so I don't claim it. Both when I look at my bloodline and I speak to my ancestors, I go, whatever part of you were responsible or helped participate in the colonization of this land that I was born on, like, we have some work to do. We have some healing to do. There are some wrongs that need to be righted, that need to be put right. And there's a lot of unpacking that I've just been doing as far as going back to my Catholic roots, really looking at Catholicism, which means universal church, and the colonistic mentality of Catholicism and Christianity, with their missionaries, with their crusades, with their popes for the last 2,000 years. And it infuriates me. And I look at the crusades and those holy world wars where they were killing in the name of God, it sickens me. Hypocrisy. The fact that the Pope had so much power that it was kings would not make a decision without the Pope's consent. Which means people like Christopher Columbus didn't go and landed the Bahamas without the Pope's permission. Which means a ton of colonizing happened under the blessing, under a papal blessing. And that's infuriating. And because when I'm looking at Catholic and Christianity, I am looking at Rome. I'm looking at the Roman Empire. I'm looking at the behaviors of Alexander the Great, conquering. And then Christianity arose and they threw out the pantheon of the old gods, adopted Christianity, and Rome fell. But it rose again as the Vatican. And all the holy wars that proceeded from there. That led to the colonizing of America, which means the genocide of the indigenous who lived on Turtle Islands. Now known as the United States of America. And then the fact that the genocides that took place here of the indigenous, the fact that Hitler took notes from America's genocide playbook, and then the Holocaust happened, and the genocide of the Jewish people. And that brings us back to now, where there is still a genocide going on. There are stolen and missing indigenous women across the Americas and Canada. The genocide hasn't stopped. Neo-colonistic mentalities still exist. And it's this demonize and destroy tactic of the colonizers. Because Catholicism did it, demonize and destroy all polytheistic religions and belief systems for monotheism. Then label them as heathens. Then when they were colonizing the Americas, they labeled the indigenous as savages, demonize and destroy again. And now here we are in 2021, and we are still have this colonistic dominate, demonize, and destroy mentality going throughout our culture. but now it's more subversive. Now it's gaslighty. Not that it hasn't always been, but it is insidious. Cannot be spiritual people without addressing these very human, very devastating topics that are so important right now. We really need to look at our roots, where we come from, and how we participate and perpetuate colonistic mentalities. Bring an end to it. And that's what we need to do. We need to systematically unpack these things. We need to unpack Christianity and Catholicism hardcore. And all the abusive doctrine that exists within it. Turn the other cheek. That goes against the instinctual self. The right to stand up for your sovereignty, for your body, for your beingness. And then forgive them, Father, for they know what they do. Oh, the colonists knew what they were doing when they put prices on people's heads who did not have the same skin color as them or speak the same language of them, or we have to do better. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They don't realize that they're killing the divine in all of its different forms. Yeah, you're right. They don't know. They have no idea the magnitude of what they're doing, but they know what they're doing. And we can't be apologetic to the abusers. There's no abuser apologists here. There's no colonizer apologists here. If that makes me any less spiritual, okay. I'm probably not your spiritual teacher. If injustice doesn't anger you, and you see anger as low vibe, I'm not your spiritual teacher. If you think that ignoring what's going on in the Black, Asian, and indigenous communities is low vibe, then I'm not your spiritual teacher. If ignoring India and continuing to teach yoga in spite of knowing better, I'm not your spiritual teacher. I wrote something, and I wonder if I can pull it up, because I'm going to read it to you. Okay. Because it kind of concisely puts everything that I've just kind of touched on into a paragraph. Because I think Christianity and colonization is the original cancel culture. I don't think Gen Z came up with cancel culture. No. I'm giving Gen Z way too much credit. No offense, Gen Z, I love you. But I think Christianity has been canceling other cultures for thousands of years. And y'all just got here, so let's be humble. I've been in this place, as I've said earlier, in resistance to teaching Kundalini Yoga because of the sexual harm Yogi Bhajan caused Priyanka and other women in 3HO. And though I've held my daily sadhana for 5 years, I am now at this point where I am asking myself, am I perpetuating harm by teaching Kundalini Yoga? Am I teaching a technology that heals, or am I teaching a lie? Is it Sat Nam, which means truth is my name, truth is my identity, to teach Kundalini Yoga? Because I've been mentally going through the patriarchal colonizing influence that has infiltrated spirituality. The colonizing patriarchal nature of Catholicism and Christianity in which I was raised. The line of thought that the Roman Empire fell and rose again as the Vatican haunts me. The Pope's word was law, much like Caesar's word was law. And for many people right now, the president's word is law, or past presidents. The idea that kings would not piss without the Pope's permission gives even more gravity to events like the Crusades with their mass forced conversions that destroyed diversity within humanity with monotheistic propaganda and killing in the name of God. It destroyed cultures across the globe. It destroyed families and communities across the globe. Catholic means universal, which to me points simply to that there was always a globalistic agenda to rid the world of its diversity of belief. Global evangelizing missionaries were sent and spread far and wide to bring quote unquote salvation. What they brought were the seeds of colonization. If global peoples did not convert, they were killed and enslaved and forced to practice in hiding, and many enslaved were forced to convert and adopt white people's ways. And then when we look at the USA and we see the same behaviors of colonizing, quote unquote, discovering, and all those that live in this idea, this colonizing idea, colonistic idea, that anyone who lived on these lands, that lived on Turtle Island before they got here to quote unquote discover it, were less than them. Then they labeled them savages and slaughtered and enslaved them and then marginalized them. Those were quote unquote Christian people. And the genocides that took place on America, the fact that future genocides happened because of the genocides that happened here in America on Turtle Island, its real name. I think it's very important to address the hypocrisies that we've grown up with. I think it's extremely deep shadow work to look into our histories so that we ourselves do not repeat them. Are we giving the justice that the indigenous more than deserve, that Black people more than deserve, that Asians more than deserve? They deserve more than justice. They deserve all the reparations and more. And we can't just go, I know, or it happened 200 years ago, when we have been benefiting from a fucking corrupt, broken system. If we're really love and light, then honest to goodness, we need to be doing better. We need to be helping these communities, not not learning a little bit here and a little bit there and saying, oh, I respect the culture. No, it's not enough. And to dive into our roots and really start figuring out where we come from, what we stand for, and how we're going to build a really healthy, beautiful world for everyone. And it starts with unpacking our roots, our histories. By addressing the needs of the time. Because if we don't change, nothing will change. And I cannot ignore the cries for help. I will not be silent in our need to address this individually and collectively. I think this is some of the highest spiritual work we could be called to do in this time. To make things truly right. Once again. I love you all. And I talk to you all soon. I know this froze. Sorry about that. But I appreciate you staying and listening to the rest of this. Take care. Infinite love and blessings.